It took about 2 years of personal work,
Wow.
So that meant that it's like I did a degree in communication and like,
Spirituality almost, you know?
well, yeah, it was more around, how do you communicate with somebody that's got so many issues?
Yeah.
So it was around communication, education around drug use, around learning about the stages of change, so I had to do the work. If we expect our family member to go off and do this work at a rehab, whatever that means, then because all they're doing is there's no silver bullet. Like, you don't go off to rehab and then everything's fixed. You got to work on yourself. So I was asking him to go off and do work on himself. So I've got to do just as much work. Again, I'm a role model, so I've got to work hard. So to learn about how to deal with life takes a lot of work. It's like I did a degree in personal education on how to be the best person I can be.
Yeah.
So it's not like someone says you need to detach or you need to let it go. Well, if you say that to somebody with you can't do that without a whole lot of hard work.
Yeah.
So
100%.
so when it comes up like, oh no, he's been picked up with the police again, he hasn't got a record yet, I've got to do everything I can to make sure he doesn't get a record, I've got to go and get the most expensive barrister and a QC, and so all of a sudden you're working on all that. It's not until you learn that, oh, hold on a sec, is that my responsibility or not my responsibility? And then actually sticking to it, learning.
That's the hard bit, yeah.
Because then you got to learn. I've got my own things that I do, like when somebody's got addiction, and the drug is calling them. They've got to have ways of dealing with that. How do you, distract yourself? How do you, distractions and is there another option? So all those things that the person with addiction is learning, that's what I had to learn.
Yeah.
I had to learn how do I distract myself from that obsessiveness? How do I deal with my own anxiety around this? Like, I can fix anything. Like, if you give me a problem, I can fix it. So I had to stop doing that, though. I had to let him go through his own process and stay as connected as possible. So and let him solve it.
Boom. Welcome everybody to another show of Real Drug Talk. Now, today is pretty special and I'm excited because I think this is one kind of interview that I've been trying to tie down for a while because, as Debbie would know, being in this space, I reckon 80% of the people that are looking for answers, information, solutions are probably family members, and 20% actually being individuals themselves. Usually it's the family members that kind of come to the forefront, faster than the individual themselves, which is pretty kind of understandable. And I would say that there's actually a lack of information and stories out there, and probably support services as well to help families, understand, deal, and process drug and alcohol issues and addiction and all that sort of stuff. So we've got Debbie on today, which I'm excited about because, yeah, she has a pretty amazing story and great insight and experience in working in this space. So how are you, mate?
I'm well, thanks.
That's good. That's good. Now, just before we jump into it, I'll tell everyone about it in the intro as well, but sorry for anyone watching. I'm in a bomb site. My house is getting renovated and we just have to push on and do what we do. And behind me, I'm in the dining room because my bathroom's getting done. I was going to sit in the lounge room, but we got a park next door and the abattoirs are just rolled up today and they're sawing trees down. And I don't think anyone wants to listen to that for the whole show while we talk to each other. So I'm in the dining room. Literally, it's a construction site. But we push on. But so how are you? How's your day been, by the way? Because mine's pretty hectic and chaotic.
Yeah, I'm well, thanks. I'm not renovating.
That's good.
But there may be some noise of dogs because I do help people out when they're on holidays and look after their dogs. So there's quite a few dogs here.
Love it. Love it. Well, the show is called Real Drug Talk. So we're living up to the name. We're just flowing in the moment and how it is. All right. So,
Yeah.
look, I think what we might do just to kind of set the scene, do you want to give us, I always say this to people, don't feel constricted to the 3 minutes, but do you want to give us the 3-minute snapshot of your story as a family member dealing with, you know, alcohol and drugs with family and yeah, tell us how that all has come about in your life?
So yeah, it's quite a few years ago now. It's maybe 15 years ago.
Wow.
One of my sons, he was doing really well. He had a great job, great friends, and he was living at home. So he was 18.
Yeah.
And I went into his room to put some clothes, clean clothes into his room. And I noticed there was a hole in the ceiling and in the plaster. And I was thinking, oh, I must get that fixed. And I stood on a chair to work out what the problem was and put my hand up into the little hole and pulled down needles, syringes, and a sharps container and a
Wow.
tourniquet,
Tourniquet.
and went, oh my gosh, what the hell's going on? So I remember that first feeling of absolute dread, panic. My heart nearly stopped. I was so frightened because I really hadn't had any experience with drug use at all.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to do, and I thought he was at work, and I thought it may be better to text him rather than to confront him and talk to him face to face. So I texted him and said, sorry, I went into your room, put this stuff away, and found this drug paraphernalia, and what's going on? And he said that the usual answer is, oh, don't worry about that, Mum, that's not mine. I'm just holding on to it for a friend.
Yeah.
He's having some problems at the moment and I'm just trying to help him out, and I took it off him and didn't know where to put it. So at first I was hoping that was true, but he even mentioned the friend's name who I didn't know was having some issues. So I was kind of half hoping it was true and then still panicking about it.
Wow. Wow.
So so that kind of then went on to, then I started to think about, well, he had missed some family events. He was getting he was a very, very organized person, very orderly, very never late for work. And then I was thinking, he has missed a few events. He is a little bit more scattered. He's not as organized as he used to be. So then I started to become a bit of a spy. And then started to check things, and then found some silver paper and found something that I didn't know what it was in, like a few weeks later.
Yeah.
And then confronted him again, and he said, look, it was just he just tried it a few times and it was heroin. And then again, my heart sank. And so then I was so upset. And then I just went into, then I tried to go into fix it mode.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, well, all my kids have all had different problems in life, and I've been able to fix everything else, so I'll fix this one as well.
Yeah, interesting. So can I ask? Obviously, like I couldn't even imagine it. We've got a child on the way, and it's funny with this work that I do. You know, it really has made me stop and think, like, wow, it's kind of made it that much more real. Like, fuck, how would I deal with a situation like that? Or, you know, and I think about those things, obviously, because I'm doing this every day. But, you know, when you first found the heroin in the roof or the drug paraphernalia, obviously, which you probably know now, if someone's at the end where they're using IV heroin, injecting it, it's kind of like it's somewhat extreme, I guess you could say, you know. Was there any signs, like, did you have any awareness before you found that things were going wrong, or was that just kind of the first time that you realized that there might be some issues going
on? Well, he had, like, I knew that, you know, he had a group of friends that liked to party.
Yeah.
But they would, and I knew they, they would drink, and I knew maybe they'd use some ecstasy at parties.
Yeah.
But I'd kind of thought, well, I looked at the balance in his life and thought, well, he's still going to work. He's still got a nice group of friends at that point. So probably in hindsight, when I look back on it,
Yeah.
there were signs that, that he was getting more disorganized. He wasn't saving his money like he used to.
Yeah.
So, but I kept on putting it down to, well, he's 18. He's not, so
Yeah.
I kept on excusing it away, I guess.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was, he was still he kept it, so he was a very independent person. So he kept it very secret.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, because he's not going to tell me.
Yeah, that's right. It's so interesting. And you're right. My mum said the same thing to me about my situation. And, a lot of other people say the same thing. Like, yeah, it is kind of hard to know completely if you've had no experience with it before, because it's, as you said, some of the signs and symptoms can be put down to normal kind of teenage partying behavior, really, can't they? So it can be incredibly hard to know. Yeah. Until you find it in the roof.
Yeah, just in the ceiling, so. And because he kept on saying, Mum, don't worry, it's not mine, it's so-and-so's. I'm just, trying to help him. He still was, I was still hoping. I was still, I guess, a bit in denial, really.
Yeah.
And I can see why, because I didn't want to, I knew nothing about drugs, and I didn't want to have to know. I said, well, keep it somewhere else. I said, oh, no, don't worry, Mum, I'll just get rid of it. So we had a really good relationship. So I never ever had a reason to doubt him in the past.
Yeah, 100%. So you said before I interrupted there that, the second time you found the actual heroin in the foil and you confronted him about it, your heart sank when he told you, that he tried it a few times, it was heroin, and you wanted to go and fix the problem. Like, what sort of happened next from there?
So I started to read a little bit on the internet.
Yeah.
And it was all about getting them into a rehab and getting them, fixed. So I didn't really communicate with him or anything. I just went into fixing mode, which, looking back was not helpful at all. But that's the stage I was in. The stage I was in was like, all right, we've got this now, we've got to fix it. It sounds like he's got a problem, even though he's still denying it. But things started to go wrong.
Yeah.
Other things, like one day I saw him walking. He didn't realize I was home, and I saw him walking out the front window, walking out the front with our stereo player. And I was going, I wonder where he's going. Yeah. And then he put it under the next door neighbor's bush. And I was going, why is he putting our stereo under the bush of the next door neighbor? Because I just couldn't comprehend what was happening. I just couldn't comprehend it.
Yeah. So can you give us an insight? Because that's really funny. And I forget all those things that I used to do as well when I was, kind of desperate for alcohol and drugs, and just the shit that I would sell and the kind of weird stuff that I do. But what is it like? Like, can you just kind of maybe tell a few stories or some insights like that of like the madness that goes along with it? Like, did things progress from there? Was that sort of the start for him, or was he well into his addiction? Or like where did things kind of go from there?
So it started to go, it just, each day it went downhill further and further.
Yeah.
And in that some of our belongings started to discreetly disappear.
Yeah.
It was very discreet. He still kept everything very discreet. Tools started to disappear out of the shed.
Yeah.
That things that he thought that we wouldn't miss.
Yeah.
then I'd be asking. And then one day, the worst thing that happened was my laptop. I was doing a report for work,
Yeah.
and I had a deadline of 5 o'clock, and I went to use my laptop, and it wasn't on my desk.
Yeah.
And I normally wouldn't have been home this day, and I rang him and said, "Where's my laptop?" And he said, "Oh, I've just borrowed it, and I'll get it back for you straight away." And at that point, I said, "I'm either calling the police or you tell me where the laptop is. I need it right now." And then he said, "It's at Cash Converters." So I sped down to Cash Converters, and they wouldn't give it to me because, of course, he was the one.
He signed it out. Yeah.
He signed it out. So I sat on there. I talked them into giving it to me, and I had the laptop on their desk, finishing my report, so that I could not get sacked from work, and then
Wow.
had to give it back to them. And
Wow.
then, so that's when I went, oh my gosh, that's when I went into fix it mode, and I was angry then. I started to get angry, really angry.
Yeah.
So I went from panic to absolute anger.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And I want to explore that a little bit as we go. We might just kind of keep going through the story because I think it's really interesting to hear just what your life was like dealing with that, and then B, all these different ranges of emotions that you felt throughout this time. But how's Cash Converters? It's been obviously 10 years nearly since I was kind of doing all that stuff, and I don't know if people do it differently these days, but Cash Converters used to basically, their business model was, getting things in hock from drug addicts. And, you used to go and do that. You used to go and give the cash loan because they would give you more money for the cash loan rather than actually selling it to them. Anyway. So that's amazing. So you got angry. Did things change for you then? You stopped trying to help him and getting him into rehab, or
oh no, that ramped up because I went, right, I've got to fix it. So the fixing thing ramped up really big. So I was ringing every rehab in the world, everywhere in Australia, going, right, you're going to rehab. And he was still saying to me, "Mum, it's not a problem. I was only borrowing the computer because I needed to owe people money, and then I was just going to go back and get it, and everything will be fine."
Yeah.
So.
And were you believing that even though you're angry, were you still kind of believing him at that stage?
I was hoping that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
I kept on going from fear to frustration, and then and knowing, oh, well, there is a problem now, so the problem has to be fixed. So I had my agenda, and I really didn't talk to him at all about what his agenda was.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't really talk to him much about it. I just knew we needed to fix it. Because if I brought up anything to do with drugs, he said he would shut me down very quickly.
Yeah.
He got very good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's so interesting. And so you were ringing around, kind of sounds like tearing your hair out a little bit, trying to get him some help. And did you manage to talk him into going to a rehab, or he just denied it flatly all the time?
No, I didn't get him into rehab. He said he didn't have a problem. He knew what he was doing, and everything would be fine, and I needed to stop worrying about him.
Yeah.
So then everything rapidly went downhill very quickly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So what happened? His life just started to fall apart?
Well, it just started to unravel. He stole from his boss, so he got sacked from work.
Yeah. Yeah.
He crashed a few cars, wrote a few cars off.
Yeah.
He started to get involved with stealing, because he was, unbeknownst to me, he was using up to $700 a day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I can't even imagine how you would finance that.
Unbelievable.
And I could see he didn't know how he was going to ever work it out. So I did get some help. So then I realized that he was in and out of courts. He started to ring me from police stations to come and get him, and then also there was lots of court cases.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does, as a mother, like, how do you emotionally deal with that? You've touched on that a little bit, like that, like the different waves and ranges of emotions have kind of come up a little bit in that time. But yeah, like, what is going on? Like, what are you thinking and feeling during this whole time? Do you start blaming yourself? Like, what's that whole process like?
Yeah, well, I started to think, where did I go wrong in my parenting?
Yeah.
Obviously, it was my fault. So obviously, what had I done wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And kept on going back, trying to work it out. And then still worried because of overdosing. I started to work out who his groups of friends were, and did speak to somebody that said he had an overdose. So then I started to become concerned about that.
Yeah.
And it was just really, and it became chaotic. And then the whole family dynamic started to get affected.
Yeah.
Because then I told other family members, he wasn't turning up to family events. So, where is he? Well, I used to just excuse it away, like work or this or that. And then in the end, one by one, I would start to tell people in the family members. But then everybody had their way of dealing with it, their ideas.
Right. Yeah.
So nobody, it started to it had a ripple effect through the whole family.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that the biggest thing that you found in your experience, like that, you just felt like guilty about it, or like you'd done something wrong, and how do you actually get over that? Or is that the right thing? Or because it's something that I hear so often from people. It's the first thing that they say, like, oh, fuck, I fucked it up, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, I guess I started to not be able to sleep. We started to get raided by the police.
Wow.
So then I was starting to hear car doors banging, and thinking it was police all the time. So so I was starting to get traumatized by it, really.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, this is a problem that I've got now. So I need to try and get help for myself.
Yeah.
So it was once I got I started to worry about myself rather than worrying about him, that things started to improve.
Right.
Because I was able to go and get some help for me and understand what was happening to me.
Yeah. And when you say improve, is that just improve within yourself, or improve his situation as well?
I'd improve everything. It improved the family. It improved for him. It didn't stop the drug taking, but our communication, and the way so this is down the track. It was after like over a year. It was a long time. It wasn't just like straight away. But the more I worked on myself, the more I worked on our connection, our communication between us. And then I realized that the only way for him to ever move on in his life, he may never. I started to be more accepting of the situation. I learned enough about addiction to realize that this wasn't something that I could stop, that it didn't matter how many rehabs I tried to throw him into, that wasn't going to help if he wasn't quite ready to do any work around it, or he didn't even know if he had a problem or not. I assumed I had my own agenda, right? Like my agenda was, I've got to fix this. I've got to get him to stop taking drugs. So that's the only problem I could see at the beginning. And then as I started to get my own help, I realized, I worked out what was my responsibility and what was his responsibility. And I worked out those lines, and I worked out what could I live with, what couldn't I live with. I learned a lot about boundaries. I learned about how to live with somebody in that home has issues. Whether could I live with him in the home? Couldn't I live in? So I had all these questions that I was approaching differently. So at first I thought, oh, I know what I've got to do. I've got to throw him out, and I've got to, let him know that, you know, he won't have a family and he won't have a house to live in and he won't, and then he'll work it out.
Yeah.
But then I realized it's still my agenda. It's still nothing to do with
Yeah.
him. It's to do with, so that's, I worked through all that. So it was my work that I did on myself that helped my son.
It's so interesting. And obviously, you know, it's something that I talk to families about as well. And as you said, and I can understand, I really empathize with it. It's so hard to, in that situation as a family member, to kind of go, well, you know, actually by working on myself, that's what's going to help my loved one change. It might not get the desired result that I want, but it's actually going to help to guide them in the place that maybe I want them to a bit more, or just make the situation better. It's so hard to understand. And I get how hard that is, because even, you know, after years of doing this myself, I've had family members, you know, have their addiction issues. And then I've struggled to do that, you know, even though I know all the theory behind it and stuff like that. So I get it. But what is it about that, like actually kind of looking at yourself and working on yourself within that whole situation, that helps? You kind of touched on it a bit, like the communication, because it is so counterintuitive. It's like, you know, you see the problem, you want to fix the problem, but you can't actually do that. So what is it about it that helps when you work on yourself in those scenarios?
I had to work out a whole lot of strategies myself on how to deal with my own anxiety around it.
Yeah.
So, and then I had, and how was I going to work it in the home? So I said, well, what can I live with and what can't I live with? The problem's already here. So I can't change it now. I can't go back into the past. So I have to be really accepting that he has an addiction to heroin at the moment. So and with that, because he's using up to $700 a day, he doesn't have any income. So with that is going to come a whole lot of criminal activities. So I had to stop trying to save him, like trying to get lawyers and get him out of it and worry about what he's, you know, oh my God, I can't let him have a police record because that will affect his work. And I've got, so every move he made as a mum, I could see, oh no, I don't want that to happen. Oh no, I don't want that to happen. Oh no. So I had to be more actually accept that based on what's happening, things are going to go very differently for him than I had thought would happen. But this isn't. So I recognized that I went through a lot of grief. So I was grieving the loss of where I thought he would be up to in his life. Yeah. So I grieved the loss of him losing his work because he loved his work. Yeah. And then I grieved the loss of him losing all his really, really nice group of friends, and there was lots of things. And so I had to recognize, oh yeah, that's the grief part. Then I had to work out, what am I responsible for and what's he responsible for? So if he goes and gets into trouble with the police, then he's responsible for that and not me. But if he's responsible, then I've got to let it go. So then I can't be angry with him because I can't believe you're getting involved with the police and you're doing this and you're doing that, because that's still his stuff. So if I'm angry about it, then it's important that I go and find, I had the five friends principle. So I found 5 people that I knew wouldn't judge me, knew the truth. So there's a lot of people I still didn't tell because I didn't tell people that weren't going to be helpful to me. Because I didn't want it because of the whole judgment around it. I was involved in so many committees in the community. I was involved in so many sporting groups that I didn't want it. And I know how the judgment around drug use is just horrendous in our community. So I didn't want our whole family to be affected by that. So I didn't broadcast it, but I certainly found 5 contacts for myself that if our house got raided, and then, you know, we're raided again, and my son's jumped over the back fence, he's well and truly gone. So our family's got to deal with the police raid. So there's still a 14 and a 16-year-old
Yeah.
That's trying to get through school and trying to do normal, in the middle of being handcuffed on the couch because they can't work out which one is the one that they're after, because they didn't know that, unbeknownst to them, he's well and truly gone. So the younger ones were also having to, because it affected everybody, I had to then be able to go. I couldn't then ring him up and get so angry with him because we'd been raided again. I had to go, that's his stuff. So I would just go, oh, okay, this is his stuff. Just get through this, answer the questions that we need to answer, and then get on with my day.
Yeah.
And not have to, not then take it on. Like, oh, where is he? Okay, I've got to get him to the police. Okay, I've got to get this sorted. All right, because it's not actually my stuff.
Yeah.
Whether he does or doesn't go to the police. Well, I had to be able to learn to go, and that's through acceptance. Oh, okay, this is happening. And of course it will happen, because the life he's now in, that's pretty normal. So I've now got to accept that it's not me doing it. It's not the rest of our family doing it. It was his life. So I let go of worrying about his future, about this, about, all I knew was the most important thing to do was keep him alive, number one, because if he's alive, then
he's got a chance.
He's got a chance. And to keep the strongest relationship with him possible.
Yeah.
Because I knew that if he's and then I thought he can live at home, but there's got to be some basic rules.
Yeah.
So the normal rules kind of went out the window that you would have, but I thought we need some basic rules. So the rules were, you're going to cook once a week, because this is a family. So you're going to cook once a week, and you're going, there was only 3 rules. No drugs in the house.
Yeah.
No drugs in the house. So not about drug use. It was just no drugs in the house. That was at the beginning, actually. No drugs in the house, and being responsible to the family. So cooking once a week, and not being abusive. So not being rude to me, or So they were the only rules. And could you please keep the police raids down to a minimum?
And did he stick to those rules?
And he stuck to them all. In fact, one day he got picked up by the police and he was taken in for questioning. He called me from the police station and said, don't worry, I know it's my turn to cook. I've already done the shopping. Probably stolen it, but anyway, he'd done the shopping. And he was going to do a full admission to the police, because they said if he did a full admission, they would get him out of there really quickly back to his car and he'd be home in time. Yeah. So he wasn't ringing me to say, sorry, Mum, I got caught up again. Can you come to the police? He was ringing me to say, I'm sticking to the boundary. I'm sticking to the boundary. I'm going to be home to cook. But I was able to give him room to do that, because if I had been on his back about how dare you get picked up by the police again, this is not going to happen, and try to control and have my own agenda,
it breeds a secretivity.
Yeah, and also then I would have booted him out of the house many months before then.
Yeah.
But and I knew if you've got a heroin problem, I just don't think your life can go normal, especially, because I was thinking when I started to read. And so the most important things I did was I got educated myself around heroin use. I got the 5 really, really important contacts for me, so that when I needed to vent and when I felt like jumping over the table, grabbing him by the throat and killing him, I could say to him, that must be difficult. But I could ring my friends and vent to them and go, I'm going to freaking kill him. But I didn't say that to him, because what's the use? I wanted to be, started to understand around emotional regulation, and about, there's a lot he could now not regulate, but there's a lot I can regulate. So if I wanted to be I needed to model good behavior to him. Yeah. Not punish him, continually punish.
Yeah. So interesting. And it kind of makes the hair stand up, and it's such a great explanation. And I remember in my own story, I often tell this to people as well. I remember that I can actually remember that down to almost the day when my mum did the same thing with me. I later found out, you know, down the track that she'd actually gone and spoken to someone like yourself, you know, that had been through, had a loved one go through addiction, and, you know, some of the stuff that they did, and her, you know, she heard their experience, and she said she didn't really do anything that they did. It just helped so much to just kind of hear that experience. But I remember she started communicating with me differently, and exactly like what you said, it changed from this dynamic of me almost like trying to get away with something and hide it from my family to, no, Jack, like these are the boundaries, and if you step over these boundaries, like these will be the consequences, you know. And eventually that resulted in, and I love what you said, you know, it's about what you can live with as a family member, because people ask me that all the time as well. Families, oh, well, what should I do? Is this when I kick him out, or is this when, and the question is always, well, what can you, if the worst possible case scenario happens, what will you be able to live with as your decisions? And that's what, in my case, mum did, because I had my brother who was young at that time. I think he was about 7 or 8. And she made the decision for her that, well, I'm impacting too much and making everyone unsafe. So, Jack, I really love you. As soon as you want help, I'm here. And she would tell me that all the time. But unfortunately, at the moment, just we feel unsafe, and you can't live here, you know. And it was just a really normal, healthy conversation, and that's what she could kind of live with. But it was interesting, exactly the same as how you described it. Kind of somewhere unconsciously, even though at the time I said, oh, you're a fucking bitch and whatever, unconsciously I knew that my mum and my family was always there to help me when I wanted it, you know. So and then obviously when that moment came and I asked for it, I got the help, which was pretty cool. So yeah, it's really interesting how you explain that.
So different times when my son ended up in court.
Yeah.
There was one day he'd done so many things wrong. He had 3 court appearances on one day, one at Moorabbin, one in Melbourne, and one at Ringwood. And he said, I've got to go to 3 different court cases. And I'd say to him, that must be really difficult. Oh, you'll work it out.
Yeah.
So I wasn't caught up with the outcomes anymore, because sometimes I see families now that they actually prolong the problem for people, for their family members, because the family member never actually gets to feel the consequence of what they do, you know. So that day I could have gotten the car and driven him to 3 different courts easily, but I just said, oh, I'm sure you'll work it out. But he was waiting for me to say, can you take me? And I just said, I'm sure you'll work it out. So, and if we ever did go to court, sometimes we did, but we saw it more like a lunch date, because he was so busy and frantic in his addiction and everything that came with it, like all the criminal activity, that we never sometimes saw him very much. But on a court day, his cases were always so complex, they never got heard before lunch. So we'd see it as lunch date. So as many of the family that was around would go and have lunch with him at the court, because we knew where he'd be, and we'd have lunch. So we didn't discuss the case. We didn't discuss anything about anything. We were just there to catch up and continue to build the relationship, continue to keep connected, and just to continue to be normal. And we'd sit at the back of the court, and they'd say, you know, the lawyer would always say, you know, the family is here to support. So, you know, you'd have your little role to play. But whether he ended up incarcerated or he ended up with community orders or whatever, I was so detached from outcomes that it didn't matter. It just didn't matter. What happens, happens. And what plays out today will play out. It doesn't matter. My role that day was not for the outcome. It was just to have lunch with him and to connect and I learned a lot about the court system. I learned a lot on the way about addiction, about court systems, about mental health systems, about police systems. I learned a lot about the whole system. So I became curious. So I carried more curiousness about everything rather than and I wondered about things rather than getting caught up with frustration and fear and worry. And if I saw that stuff coming, I would understand that's what it was, but then I would just focus back on. And so that took a huge amount. I had to learn a lot. So I plugged into a huge, amazing psychologist
Yeah.
who really worked really hard with me and then I became the best support for my son.
Yeah. And just quickly, I just want to retouch on it because it's never the answer, and you would know this, it's never the answer, that families want to hear, is that you have to have acceptance around the situation and what's going on and do all the things that you spoke about and detach from the outcome. It's never the answer, because obviously you want your child or your loved one to have a good result. You know what I mean? Obviously. But was it hard for you to get to that place, or did it come quickly? Or, because it's the thing that I find people, always struggling with, is that you tell them that and they kind of get it, but say, yeah, but, and they just want it to be different. So
it took about 2 years of personal work,
wow.
So that meant that it's like I did a degree in communication and
Spirituality almost,
Well, yeah, it was more around how do you communicate with somebody that's got so many issues.
Yeah.
So it was around communication, education around drug use, around learning about the stages of change, so I had to do the work. If we expect our family member to go off and do this work at a rehab, whatever that means, then, because all they're doing is, there's no silver bullet. Like, you don't go off to rehab and then everything's fixed. You got to work on yourself. So I was asking him to go off and do work on himself. So I've got to do just as much work. Again, I'm a role model, so I've got to work hard. So to learn about how to deal with life takes a lot of work. It's like I did a degree in personal education on how to be the best person I can be.
Yeah.
So it's not like someone says you need to detach or you need to let it go. Well, if you say that to somebody you can't do that without a whole lot of hard work.
Yeah.
So
100%.
so when it comes up like, oh no, he's been picked up by the police again, he hasn't got a record yet, I've got to do everything I can to make sure he doesn't get a record, I've got to go and get the most expensive barrister and a QC, and so all of a sudden you're working on all that. It's not until you learn that, oh, hold on a sec, is that my responsibility or not my responsibility? And then actually sticking to it, learning.
That's the hard bit, yeah.
Because then you got to learn. I've got my own things that I do, like when somebody's got addiction, and the drug is calling them. They've got to have ways of dealing with that. How do you, distract yourself? How do you, distractions and, is there another option? So all those things that the person with addiction is learning, that's what I had to learn.
Yeah.
I had to learn how do I distract myself from that obsessiveness? How do I deal with my own anxiety around this? Like I can fix anything. Like if you give me a problem, I can fix it. So I had to stop doing that though. I had to let him go through his own process and stay as connected as possible. So and let him solve it. But it wasn't like I was his biggest support person. I was his biggest fan. I understood the judgment and the horrendous it was horrendous what he was dealing with. Absolutely horrendous, because he would say things to me like, do you think I want to be like this?
Yeah.
Do you think that I woke up one morning and went, oh, I know, my new plan is to get addicted to heroin and have and then end up in the court system and then end up in custody and then have my whole family not think that I'm a down and out, and then everybody think I'm a druggie. And do you think that's what I want? And of course not. But then how does he work it out? Like, just like when a family member says to me, I tried really hard, but I can't let it go. I can't do it. I can't do it. I go, well, that's exactly how they're feeling.
Yeah.
They're feeling
100%.
exactly like you're feeling. Like, you know, that ambivalence about wanting a better life or wanting to stop, but still wanting to feel the, like, whatever it is that they use the drug for, not wanting to lose that.
100%.
So complex.
It is complex, and it's really interesting to hear articulate it like that, and it makes a lot of sense, because if you break, that's what I've learned. If you break things down to their kind of buttery essence, is that you can't control, but you can influence, and yeah, you can only control the controllables, and at the end of the day, the only person that you can actually control is you. and by actually controlling you and acting in those ways, everything that you have spoken about, it has that sort of paradoxical effect where it, you know, actually impacts on the other person, because they get used to the way that you're acting and being, and changes things in their life. It's really interesting. It's very hard, as you said, it's very hard to understand and process and let go of, because it's one of those things that's an internal job. But when you do it, it actually leads to a more effective result. So can I ask what happened in the end with your son? Was it a good story? Was it a happy ending? Yeah. Like how did it all happen?
So it was, so once I stopped worrying about it so much, it kind of became something that I even forgot that he used heroin. But
Yeah.
as the younger ones grew up and they moved out, I then allowed him to use at home if the door was open, because he was a person that never used with other people. He only used on his own.
Yeah.
And as we know, the overdose is not good. So he continued to live at home because he did help in the home. Not, you know, not like he used to. He was a very different person. And, you know, I did say, if you're going to use at home, can you make sure the door's open? So at least I know to check on you. And he never went into a rehab, but he did go to a detox once. But the only reason he went to the detox was because he was going to do some work with somebody. And so he wanted to cut his heroin down. So he wanted to push the methadone up as high as he could. And his doctor said, I'm not doing that because it'll kill you. So, but the doctor wouldn't believe how much heroin he was using.
Wow. Yeah.
But so he did go into a detox, and the nurse at the detox helped him push the methadone up really high in 1 week so he could go to work, which was really useful. So he used the detox for his reason, not for anybody else's reason. And then he was able to do a little bit more work. And then eventually he did stop. After 10 years, he did stop. And if I ask him now, why did you stop? He doesn't really have a reason, except he just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. He got sick and tired of the lifestyle. He got sick and tired of having to always be chasing it, sick and tired of running from the police, sick and tired of going into court. So if I had stopped and controlled all that stuff, maybe he would have never got sick and tired. Maybe I gave him the space to be able to get sick and tired of it.
Interesting.
And we never ever stopped communicating. We never ever had a communication breakdown. The first year for him would have been horrendous, because I was so mean and I was such a bitch and I was so controlling, and I was going to freaking fix it, and I wanted to lock him up and take him to the Simpson Desert, and I had all these crazy ideas in the first year, and I became obsessive. I was just obsessed about fixing it. Yeah. And once I was able to get my own help and get my 5 friend contacts, I had 5 contacts because I needed to share it around. I couldn't keep ringing the same person.
Yeah.
Because there was so many stories. There was always an incident. So then he just got sick and tired. Look, the day he really went, that's it, and started flushing heroin down the toilet, was when he got picked up by the police on the way to the chemist to get his methadone. And because he was so well known, he would get pulled over all the time. And he started to feel sick, so he was off to the chemist to get his methadone. He was going to have heroin in the car that day, but he didn't because he was getting really sick and had to get to the chemist really quick. So then he got pulled over, and when they pulled him out, pulled his shoes off, he got a few leaves on the bottom of his socks. He was very immaculate about his car. He got in, the leaves got into his car, but he couldn't get them out. He got home, he was trying to vacuum them out, couldn't get them out. I could hear him in the garage bitching about these bloody leaves in his car and bloody police and rah, 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 rah. And then all of a sudden I heard the toilet flushing, and he was flushing heroin down the toilet.
Wow.
And he said, it's freaking over. It's over. I'm not freaking doing this ever again. And I said to him, well, you may change your mind tomorrow, so maybe it'd be a good idea not to flush it all down, because if you flush it, then tomorrow you're going to be in a very big predicament around money again.
Mm.
And he's fighting with me, going, no, it's all going. And I'm going, oh, well, really, it'd be a good idea to think about this. But because I got so used to the problem that, and it did, he flushed it all and he never used again.
Wow.
He pushed his methadone right up, and then he said, I'm never going to get a job because of my record.
Yeah.
So what can I do? I don't know what to do. So it wasn't like he even gave up with some vision of, he gave up because he got sick and tired of the lifestyle. But then he went, he was homed in a very good home. So it wasn't like he was on the streets, homeless, with family that had disowned him. His family were closer than ever because we'd all got educated. Yeah. So if he came to a family event, if he could stay 5 minutes, it didn't matter. It didn't matter if he was there 2 minutes. There was no judgment around him anymore. And that's what helped him through it. And but it was his decision. And he said, I'm never going to get a job. I just don't know what to do with myself. So I said, oh, well, and then we drove past a tip truck one day, and he went, oh, maybe I could do something in excavation. I went, yeah. And then, maybe I could start my own business in something. So he was able to get somehow, because he'd been gone bankrupt during that period because he'd ripped off so many banks. He'd gone bankrupt a few times. Mm-hmm. And but then technically he had a really good credit rating because he was clear of all debt. Wow. So he somehow swindled a loan for somebody and bought a tip truck.
Wow.
He didn't even know how to drive a tip truck, and then went and did a course. And then I said, because I let him dream, I let him, I didn't knock everything on the head, go, oh, you can't do that. Oh my God, you can't do this. Oh my God. I didn't get involved. I was just with him. And then he said, oh, maybe I could get like something else. And then he did. And then he got an ABN number. And then he said, oh, maybe I could just set up a company. No, he said, oh, you can just set up a company. And I went, yeah, do you want? And I helped him do that. And then he runs a hugely successful excavation company now. And he's bought a house, and he's got an amazing partner. And he's, and we're still very, very close. And he's very close to his siblings. And he employs other young people that have had problems. So, because he knows how difficult it is. And if they turn up for an hour, they turn up for an hour. If they turn up for a day, they turn up for a day. Whatever, because he knows the struggle that it is to go through this stuff. And the judgment and the whole thing around, he's just a junkie, he's just this, he's just that. Like we never even called it for addiction. We got rid of we were very, very careful around our language because of judgment. So we never talked about him being a drug addict, or we just said, oh, he's got an issue with heroin.
Yeah.
So we never called him names. We never labeled him, because using heroin was just one little part of him. He's a very kind, caring, loving person. But during the period when he was needing to find $700 a day to use heroin, he was like absolutely crazy,
Yeah. It's amazing to hear, and it's so cool. And I think it's cool on more than one level because, like, it's important for families to know that as well, because that's one of the biggest things that happens with family members rescuing their loved ones, is that they think if they let them go too far down the rabbit hole and get in too much trouble legally and all that stuff, that they'll never ever be able to dig their way out and have a good life. And it's actually not true. It's not true. There's too many people that I know that were so fucked that have the most crazy stories. Even I just go, wow, and they pull themselves out. And it's actually that behavior channeled into something good. You know, the risk taking, the daringness, the schmoozing, the storytelling, all that stuff channeled into something positive, can actually help people to be super duper successful, which is quite interesting. So this is the thing that I love about your story as well, is that you like, as a family member and saying all this stuff, is that sometimes I guess you hear stories from family members and they say all this stuff, not to compare stories or whatever, because your pain is your pain, but you really experienced it all. Like it wasn't like it was a light, fluffy kind of drug issue. It was like right in there, full on, it was all happening, and these strategies actually still worked, in a way. And it's not even about the good result. It's just about the process in the way in which they work. So yeah.
Look, he could have kept using forever. And because through his contact with other people, I have seen people that are still using, that he had connections with then, because I run into them locally in the supermarket or all over the place. And I can see that their lives are still not good. They're still crazy. But, I make sure I stop and I chat to them and talk and, and give them my time, because a lot of them don't have families that are stuck in there. And
that's right. Yeah.
And I just can't even imagine how terrible it is for them, because everything goes, if you haven't got support, your self-esteem is affected, your hygiene, if you haven't got somewhere to live, your eating, your nutrition, everything goes if you haven't got some sort of support. And then it's just harder and harder to claw back. If you decide you want to change, well, you don't want to have to be on the street under a bridge going, think I might change now. So, because all of a sudden the heroin's not the problem or the drugs, it's homelessness, it's nutrition, it's medical issues. It becomes so complex, and for some people that's what will happen. I've got another son that's still in the middle of a terrible problem with methamphetamine. And I can't have him living at home because his lifestyle is so different to mine. I did for a little while, but at one point I went, you know what? He uses so much that he's awake 48, 72 hours at a time, and I need to sleep.
Yeah.
So I can't sleep because he's so frenetic at night and he's working and so I went, this, but I didn't like throw him out the door and then go, right, that's it, you're out. I said, this isn't actually working for me. So again, it wasn't about his drug use. This isn't working for me. I get up every morning at 7 o'clock to go to work and I'm missing my sleep. So I'm going to end up not well. So I'm going to have to help you find somewhere else to live.
Yeah.
And he said, you're such a effing mother. How dare you effing do this to me? You beep, 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 beep. So, and I said, well, if you talk to me like that, I'm going to have to call the police, which I did on many occasions. But then I said to him, I'll help you find somewhere to live. He was so obstinate about that he did end up in crisis accommodation. But I still didn't, I gave him the phone numbers. I dropped him to the address of the crisis accommodation, said, love you, as he got out of the car. Again, I would have ripped his head off if I went with how I was feeling.
Yeah.
Because, it was just so frustrating because he also was a kid who at 19 started to get the problems. And prior to that, he was on his way to what I saw was a a very balanced life.
Yeah.
He was working, he had a lovely group of friends, had a lovely girlfriend, loved life, always very happy, traveling around the world, just really good saver of money, had a beautiful car that he absolutely adored. And then all of a sudden, it all went out the window very, very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. And again, it's what I, it's why I wanted to have you on and talk about this stuff. Because obviously, which we'll talk about in a second, you do work with families in this space, and, I guess like myself, and I think everybody does that with whatever work they do. It comes from personal experience. The work that they do, or your passion for something often comes from your experience with something, doesn't it? But it's the thing I find interesting about your story is that you talk about all these strategies. I guess if you think about it in the stereotypical kind of on paper way of talking about success with this stuff, you had that with the son that we've been talking about for the last hour. But your story offers that really interesting perspective to people, because there's a lot of people that would listen to the first half of this and go, oh, well, yeah, that's very good and well for you to say, Deb, your son turned it around. But no, actually, you're still in some ways dealing with this issue with another son. And yeah, just you're living it, and I think that's really interesting for people to hear, because like what you said, it's about accepting that it's happening and then working out how you're going to deal with it, and not kind of living in la la land going, oh, well, I wish this wasn't happening, or maybe we can fix this. It's how do you live with yourself with the situation that's happening at present. Yeah, really interesting.
So even one night when he was refusing to leave the house and he was not going to leave, and I had to call the police, and the police came, and they said, oh, we'll take him down to the police station and we'll work it out. I said, just please don't bring him back here, or let him go till 7 o'clock in the morning so I can have a sleep. And so they put him in the back of the divvy van, and I still gave the police the doona and the pillow and his cigarettes, and still said, and the police took it all. And then and through the divvy van, I still said, love you, Matt, see ya. Because
I'll chop that bit out.
Yeah, because I didn't want, because I'm never ever going to be so emotionally unregulated that I'm going to be screaming and yelling at him.
Yep.
Never.
Yep.
Because what point is that? All it does is makes me feel good for a couple of minutes, and then I went inside and went straight to sleep.
Yep.
But I know other people get on that reel where you think and this is what I used to do, is you think it over and over and over and over. But I could go to myself, okay, he's safe. He's with the police. He's safe. I need to go to work tomorrow. So what's the best self-care I can do for myself right now? Go to sleep. So then, of course, you still have the reel going through your head, like over and over and over, because you start thinking about the past. What have I done wrong? How are we going to fix this? How are we going to make a change? But every time those thoughts come up now, I go, and I've done it so much now that it automatically happens. It's like my brain has been rewired, because I can go, even because it still comes. It's not like those thoughts don't come anymore, but I can go, oh yeah, that's right. My goal is to have a sleep because I'm going to work tomorrow. Oh yeah, that's right. My goal is to, oh, okay. And then my brain picks it up. It's incredible. And I wake up when my alarm goes off and I'm off to work. And then I'll even completely forget about it until I maybe get a call from somebody going, oh, we've still got your son. or he was so unwell, we took him to hospital. I go, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But again, it's not my stuff. Okay, oh good. My thought goes straight away to, oh good, he's safe, he's in a hospital. Not to, oh no, what are we going to do? How are we going to solve this problem? This is going to go on forever. They're the automatic thoughts as a parent you get. Oh no, this is going to go on forever. What have I done wrong? Oh, it must have been because the other one had the problem, so then he's modelled off that. Or, oh my God, I could go on with that forever, but I don't. I just go, oh, he's safe. Oh, good, I can get my work done.
Yeah.
Get it done. Maybe they've kept him 2 or 3 days, and then all of a sudden I get a call out of the blue going, your son's getting discharged. Could you come and pick him up?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll go, oh, hold on a sec. No, that's too far. Can't you just get him a taxi?
Yeah.
And they go, oh no. I go, can I talk to the social worker? And then I get the social worker to organise him a taxi so that I don't have to then run to pick him up, run here, run there, run there. So he's safe. He's in a taxi. So I help arrange things, or help him to arrange things, because I'll say, let me talk to my son, and then I'll say, talk to the social worker and get the social worker to help sort that out.
So interesting.
Yeah, but I couldn't have him. I could never, while he uses, I can't have him at home, because his lifestyle is so polar opposite to mine.
Yeah.
And because he gets paranoia, and so then I'll become the enemy. So then I can't support him properly in the community, or I could never support him at home.
Yeah.
So I said, oh well, so he's not living at home. So, but it wasn't like, I'm kicking you out because then you'll change your idea about using drugs. It was like, help him. And then I did help him. He lived in crisis accommodation, and that system looked after him extraordinarily well as well, because he got a housing worker and allowed that to happen. But I certainly advocated, if he was on the street saying he's got nowhere to stay, some people will think, oh, that's good, he'll get to rock bottom and then he'll change. No, he'll be just unwell on the street, no one cares about him, no family, and he'll have, instead of 1 or 2 problems, he'll have 10 problems. So, and he's in and out of the court system as well, and he's in and out of psych wards, but, the systems are looking after him.
Interesting. So a couple of questions. Do you find that, I guess this time around, you found it easier to cope and deal with stuff because you had that first experience and learned all those strategies and techniques the first time?
I still went through the denial. I still went through the fear. I still went through the trying to catch it really quickly at the beginning, thinking, oh, I can have it. But if you end up with addiction issues, I don't know, because I've never used these drugs, the feeling and the euphoria of using and then going back and going back and going back, it doesn't matter. I can never ever fix that, because the euphoria must be absolutely amazing. So most people would look at the negative impact of drugs, but they never, like I always say to my son, do a pros and cons list, because I have a lot of families are scared to do the pro list, because they go, oh, we don't want them to think about the good part about using drugs.
Yeah.
But nobody can work it out unless you weigh up the good and the bad of everything. So I always say, we'll do the good list, and I just observe, and I'm curious, and, but I certainly did still go through the trying to fix it. I still did that.
You're a human.
I still did the anxiety stuff, but what I did was I recognized it. I went, oh yeah, here I go. And I still do it now. I'll still get caught up in it a bit. I still get caught up in the controlling part. You want to control it. You don't want them to fall and have consequences. But now, if something happens, say there's some family violence that happens. In the past, I would maybe excuse it away.
Yeah.
Oh well, yes. But now so as soon as I see myself excusing something away and not taking the consequence for it, I go, oh, there I am excusing it away. So I can see it now, and then I go, so what's a rational decision to make here? So the rational decision is take the consequence. So, oh well, he's got to take the consequence. But it's hard work. This stuff is really hard. It's no different to stopping taking a drug that actually has a huge amount of benefits for you.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say to you. It's really interesting listening to you talk about it as a family member, and the kind of emotional work that you have to do on yourself. Different kind of situation, I guess, in a way, but it's the exact same kind of process that someone using drugs, if they're getting into recovery, has to go through to kind of give them up, in terms of the emotional work and the way that you process things and the acceptance and, all that stuff. it's fascinating to listen to. And have you found that, just because I know there's a lot of people listening that would be interested in this, have you found any kind of differences between the methamphetamine and the heroin, like in terms of, you know, what happens? I don't know, you wouldn't call it, is one worse than the other, but is it harder to deal with, you know, either of those?
Well, one makes you fall asleep and one makes you stay awake. So
Yeah.
for days. So for that, I think it was also the personality of the two. I know, you know, heroin. Well, Chris was on the not a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on the not a lot.
Yeah.
But and he would be, you know, I would always be more concerned about the overdosing
Yeah.
and the central nervous system shutting down, whereas the other one, the central nervous system's always on, absolutely full on and crazy, and you know, and then with that comes, you know, but no, it's not all bad, because when he's really hyper alert and he's really switched on, he works really hard. So it's not all bad. Like, it's not like it's all negative, negative, negative. If you look
Yeah.
at that. But it was more to do with the acceptance of around boundaries. One could accept the boundaries. The other one can't accept the boundaries. Fights really, really hard against boundaries.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will say to me, what, you know, should I let him stay home or should I let him not kick him out and all that? Well, I had one at home during the whole 10 years, and I had one that only spent a year of the problem at home. And he's into his 9th year.
Yeah.
So, so, you know, and so it's not about whether he will or won't ever stop. It's just about just maintaining some sort of balance in his life. And he'll determine whether he does. He'll work that part out. But he was different because he did go to a lot of rehabs because he kind of wanted to sort it, and he kind of realized that he had a problem, but he couldn't work it out. He always did very well at the rehabs.
Yeah.
He worked hard. He used to do the work, but he always found it very, very difficult coming back out from being around a very supportive group. Coming back out into the community, he always found it very difficult because because he can't get his head around a purpose. He can't work out what his purpose is, or but he'll work it out. He'll work it out. And the main thing is just to keep him alive during this period. That's just to minimize the harm. You know, let him take the consequences for what happens. And because he's been using for quite a long time now, it's obviously affecting his brain, and he does get a lot of problems with psychosis. So it's a court system and a hospital system that he jumps in between. But again, you know, I'll go to court with him if he wants me to go. I'll visit him when he's in hospital if I've got time. But if I visit him, I'm not visiting or not visiting based on, if I visit, that will help him, or if I don't visit, that will punish him. And that's a good idea. It's around what's best for me.
Yeah. Interesting. And I love what you just said, to kind of weigh it up about how every situation is different, and it's about you and bringing it back to what you can live with. I love that, where you said with one, they were at home for the whole 10 years. And then the other one, they're only at home for 1 year based on the lifestyles and all the different stuff. So it's highly interesting. And I think the way that you're framing it, I think, is really beneficial for people to hear, to get out of that punish and reward mentality. It's about the communication and the way that you're processing it and living with it. Yeah, super interesting. So is that the work? Well, I know it is, but tell us about the work that you do now. And obviously it's a result of, you know, having these experiences yourself.
So when I reached out for support, I noticed that there wasn't a huge amount of support, and that the whole system around alcohol and drugs was very hard to navigate, around family support or friend support. And I also realized that the most important thing for me was the long-term support.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like you go off and do one course and then you know what you're doing and then it's all over. Or so I did different courses and I went to different support groups. But one thing that I've also felt it wasn't flexible enough for families, because some families need to be supported for many, many years, like because if the problem goes on for 10, if the complexity of the family member is for 10, 20 years, no different to if they had cancer, or you're a carer for somebody with other medical issues, you need support to be a carer or a supporter of somebody with complex issues. So, so we're very flexible around, like, so I did start up an organisation with 2 other mums. And around, and also another guy who also had his own issues during his life, so that we could get like we could just get a balance of what's important for families and what's not. And also it's not just one size fits all.
That's right.
So for one family, they may just need a little course or a few phone calls, and then they've got it together and they're right on their way. Other people need support for many, many years, you know, and they want to be able to relate, connect with other people that are going through the same problems. So it may be a support group, or it may be a break off of a support group of people that can go out to dinner together, and it's around sharing stories, because some of the stories that I lived through, I can't tell many people about that, because the judgment around it is massive.
Yeah.
And you know, like, well, what type of family is that? And well, no, what type of mother was she? And you know, I've got other adult children that are just doing fine in life, and you know, they just don't need so much support. Like these 2 needed a lot of support during, you know, especially the one that's got the problems at the moment. He needs a lot of support. But I can't do that unless I've got support myself. So that's what I recognized in myself. So then I said, how do I offer that to other people that are going through it? So some it's phone calls. So I would never ever, some people I've never ever met, but I've talked to them over the phone for over 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Because, you know, they may be in the middle of a crisis. And sometimes when you're in the middle of a crisis and you're having a police raid, or you're having whatever's happening, you don't need to be told what to do. You just need somebody to go and to go through options with you. You know, to go, you know, well, what are the options? What do you think you can do at the moment? Or what can you live with at the moment? And what do you want? What's the goal? Do you need some sleep tonight? Or, you know, what do you need right at the moment? So rather than looking at the person, but you have to be reminded about that stuff all the time.
100%.
So, and then other people like to get face to face and do social stuff together. Other people just want one-on-one counselling together. So we can do, so it's really up to what the family needs. So it's not just like, or education programs. So that's, you know, that's what we are able to offer families or friends or the whole network. And then there's other families where they want us to work in with the person that's got the issue. And if that person wants to work in, well, I work in with that as well. So sometimes I'm meeting with the family and the person that's got the issue, or sometimes, you know, around really simple things around communication, how to communicate, how to work out boundaries, how to work out what's acceptable, not acceptable. Just what's, and every family's different. And the people that know people that know the person with the problem the best is the family or the friends. They know. I don't know them. I don't know them as well. You know, nobody knows my son better than I do.
And it's really interesting because in other, you know, spaces that are similar to the alcohol and other drugs space, like say suicide prevention, there's been a massive amount of work done with families, because it was recognized early that, you know, they're the ones that probably are going to be dealing with most of these situations and having the most contact and can have the most influence on a situation, because they're kind of with them for say like 23 hours of the day, and they might go to a psychologist for 1 hour or whatever, but it was so important for families to know the signs and, you know, all that stuff, and be able to impact and make change. And it just boggles me, because it's the same in alcohol and drugs. Families are dealing with the brunt and most of the issue most of the time. So there definitely needs to be, you know, 100 times more support and work put into the family space. And I think it would improve outcomes so much more, you know.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the more resilient the family, this is what I've seen, the more the resilient the family, and the more work they do around communication and around boundary setting, and the better outcomes for the person with the issues.
Yeah.
And that's just so my work isn't if I do this will happen. It's built, the resilience in the family is really important, and on individuals, you don't want people breaking because of this. So that's the work I do to help. But just another side outcome is that I do see, my son moved on in his life, and he moved on because we gave him the space to be able to move on. But that was I didn't do all the work based on this will fix him. It was just and the other one that's got the issue right now, I can see that his life will continually get better and better. Because the most important thing is hope.
Yeah, that's right.
Hope is so important. But to have hope, you have to. To have hope, I had to be quite resilient.
100%. Love it. Well, we've been going for a while, so we might end it there, but fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing it. I know it's a hard thing with families, you know, because it's obviously the individuals going through the issue, and you don't want to kind of step on their toes and tell their story. You know, it's kind of their story to tell, but then you got to tell your story as well. So yeah, thanks for coming on and doing it. So what's the name of your organization, and where can people find you?
It's APOD Family Support. So APOD stands for Alcohol, Prescription and Other Drugs.
Yeah.
So APOD, Family Support. And it's on, you can find it online, APOD Family Support. And on that, if you go to the website, all the phone numbers are there. So there is 24-hour support and other education and programs that people can plug into.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Deb, for coming on. And I'm sure we'll have you back soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Jack. See you later. Have a good day.
Hey YouTube watcher, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you and your family are doing well in these extraordinary times. I also want to ask you, can you please subscribe and hit the bell notification? We're really launching into our YouTube channel this year and want to build our audience so that we can progress through the ranks and basically get the message of recovery and hope and change and all that good stuff out there to as many people as we can. So we would love it if you would consider it and subscribe and help us out. Also, for anyone seeking help and information and resources, we've put together a 100% free online course that you can access. Link in the description. So if you are looking for help, hope that, you know, is something that can help you out as well. Until next time, see you in the next video. Peace.